In a Nuzlocke, you can only catch the first Pokemon per route, and any Pokemon that faints must be left in the PC forever. This means that healing any dead Pokemon at Nurse Joy is not allowed. But what if we put Nurse Joy up to the challenge? So, I'm only allowed to catch Pokemon that Nurse Joy has caught or befriended according to this Bulbapedia article. I choose Popplio as a temporary starter and set off to take on Alola as Nurse Joy. In hindsight, I probably should have chosen the girl character and cut my hair to look more like Nurse Joy, but that doesn't stop me into running for my actual starter in Pichu. Now, having a Pichu as a starter is not that great because Pichu's a baby Pokemon, and baby Pokemon suck. So it's an absolute joy to find Zorua at the trainer school. I know some of you consider the trainer school and where we got our starter as the same route, but this would make the game way too hard. Also, I don't care what you think. With 2 monsters in our pocket and 15 minutes of mashing the A button, I head to Howley City to get another very important Pokemon. Nurse Joy's known to use a bunch of odd Pokemon here and there, and luckily one of those I can get is Magnemite. Magnemite makes light work of the trainers leading up to Howley Cemetery, where we can get another Pokemon in Drifloon. After another 15 minutes of A-mashing, we reach Verdant Cave where we can take on the first totem. Now if you guys are new, Ultra Sun and Moon doesn't operate on a gym badge system. They use totems, which are inherently easier since there's less Pokemon to defeat, but the totems start the battle with a boost to one of their stats. Luckily, after dropping its special defense a bunch of times and getting a lucky static paralysis on Totem Raticate, Magnemite can nearly take it out with a Thunder Shock, and the first badge is as good as ours. Honestly, Magnemite's cracked. It does so well in many of the boss fights and can take out half the Elite Four. What could possibly end this run? The next place of interest is Seaward Cave, where we can find ourselves a Smoochum. Smoochum admittedly is not a great Pokemon since it's another baby Pokemon, so I don't really see how much I'll be realistically using it. How jump scares us with a surprise battle, and then we end up in Iki Town to take on the first Kahuna. Hala's more like the traditional gym leader. He specializes in fighting types, which makes it difficult for my team of Dark, Steel, and Ice types. Thankfully, with the Drifloon I caught back in Howley Cemetery, this battle's become so doable by spamming Gusts and securing the victory. After running around the island one last time to collect some unreachable items, I meet my rival at the beach to surf across the ocean to conquer the next island. Akala's a new location, and that means more encounters. Just off Hiahia City is Route 4, where I can catch myself another baby Pokemon, Igglybuff. But since Jigglypuff is a friendship evolution, and I wasn't gonna walk around for 6 hours, I used some PK magic to evolve the Jigglypuff immediately. Now, the idea of unironically using Wigglytuff in this game was interesting to say the least, but I've never seen it done before, so my hopes weren't high. We run into How again in Paniola Town, where Magnemite absolutely just went to town on him, and Gladion, who's just another edgy anti-hero. When we reach the end of this route, Lana shows us around Brooklet Hill, where we're gonna take on the hardest battle in this game by far. Totem Araquanid with +2 speed, combined with the rain and a team that's simply not that great, I was in a world of hurt. The tactic that I used was admittedly not noble, and certainly not one that I enjoy using, but at least it guaranteed us the win. I sent in Drifloon first, which meant that I could get off and minimize before Araquanid could call in his ally, and I could raise my evasiveness to +2 off the rip. From there, everything was downhill. Drifloon kept minimizing as the foes kept missing their attacks, and eventually, after hitting enough gusts into the totem, Araquanid went down. Evasion stalling is not a strat that I like to use since it's not fun and it doesn't require any brain power, so that's why I'll need to catch some better Pokemon. If you check on Nurse Joy's page, you'll see that she has some Pokemon while not explicitly having other Pokemon. But I'm considering any Pokemon to have their own designated text box to be fair game, since A, I'm writing the script after I played the game, and B, did you really think that I'd read that these Pokemon were not actually Nurse Joy's? Anyway, while I'm here in Brooklet Hill, while Mudkip is not available as a wild Pokemon, Marshtomp is as an island scan encounter, and I'm gonna allow that. I can also find myself a Magikarp off the coast of Route 7 to add a second strong water Pokemon to the team. With the 2 new additions, it'll make the next battle against Alolan Marowak so much easier. After scaling up the park to the top of a literal volcano, I suffered through some Marowak dancing, doing like the creepy photographer outside my window at night, spectating and mashing the A button. Eventually, the totem Pokemon spawns and rages at us like the druggies in the Montreal Metro at 3 AM. I start off with Marshtomp to rain dance off rip to reduce the chance of a fire attack hitting us, and then Rock Tombing to lower its speed. Marowak likes to alternate between protect and an attacking move, so I'd Mud Bomb the Salazzle to change the battle back to a 1v1. I swap in my Gyarados to land and Intimidate since Marshtomp's low on health, and bite away at the totem Marowak until it sulks away. Is it just me, or does this Marowak seem to be like a Chad Jimbro picking a fight just to impress his Salazzle girlfriend? No? I must be projecting. The next totem battle is just around the corner, and there isn't much that I can do in between, so I just head there immediately to get the battle over with. Again, just like Totem Araquanid, I have nothing for Lurantis. Lurantis is an incredibly powerful grass Pokemon that's capable of annihilating my entire team, so I just had to resort back to the minimized Drifloon strategy. Look, if a strategy works, then it's not stupid. But I do want to get better Pokemon so that I don't have to keep relying on Drifloon. With the new cap of 33, this brings us into the mid-game. Drifloon evolved into Drifloon, Smoochum into Jinx, Magnemite into Magneton, and Zorua into Zoroark. We can even add a Comfey to our team from the lush jungle. If we want to progress to the next island, then we'll need to defeat the Ula'ula Island's kahuna, Olivia. Olivia specializes in rock types, which means that our Magneton's evolution came just in time. Anorith and Laleep were an easy sweep with Mirror Shot, but when it came down to Lycanroc, Bite just did a little bit too much damage on top of missing a Mirror Shot. Thankfully, this wasn't anything that Comfey couldn't handle, and Magic Leaf ended the Lycanroc out of its misery. The aftermath of beating Olivia is an all-expenses-paid trip to the Pokemon version of a slaughterhouse, where we get our first taste of Ultra Beasts. Apparently this place doesn't have its own security, and Lusamine isn't secretly Batman, so they send us, the child, to deal with this alien. After coming face to face with some questionably dressed people, they send us off to Ula'ula Island so that we can continue our journey. The mart in Ula'ula Island gives us a bunch of TMs to buy, but we're not out of the woods yet, as Hao power poses on me, itching for a battle. He threw out his cat and we sent out our Pussy Destroyer, which he followed up with an electric rat, so I gave a counteroffer in Marshtomp. Regardless, it didn't stay out long as I swapped to my Magneton to finish off his final 2 Pokemon. After walking around a bit, aimlessly gathering items and fighting trainers, I end up at a bus station much like my many nights out of Montreal. Difference is that I end up winning against the grunts. Anyway, eventually when I sober up, I find myself somewhere completely different, lost on top of a mountain. This has actually happened before in real life since there's a literal mountain next to my school campus, but at least in the game we can progress with our lives by facing the 5th Totem Pokemon. Totem Togedemaru on paper sounds like a wash with Marshtomp on our team, but it's really far from that. Togedemaru starts the battle with +2 defense, which immediately halves the damage it takes. Slap on Spiky Shield and the Citrus Berry, and you got yourself a nasty stall Pokemon. Not to mention the Skarmory ally that we can't even hit with electric moves since Togedemaru has Lightning Rod. Togedemaru immediately bounces, stalling for turns as we waste a PP on Bulldoze. He then calls in his ally and starts stalling with Spiky Shield, but Bulldoze doesn't care about contact. It hits a Dedenne for damage to take it out. And just like these toxic girlfriends I hear from, they bring in their new boyfriend 2 weeks later. I swap in my emotionless Magneton to take out the heat of their excuses with a blank stare, and after hearing enough of its excuses, we take it out for the 5th badge. Our next destination was back to Mali City, where we can move on to find out what else the Skull Island had in store for this child. After picking up some more trash on the streets, I find myself in a power plant where the eerie impulses in the air evolved my Magneton. Once I reach Tapu Village soaked from the perma rain, a little girl invites me to her house to have a little fun, which I take up on her offer. I end up in what looks like to be her parents' house and sneak through a side window to meet her. We find her in her bedroom where it turns out she really just wanted to harvest my organs. I reject the proposal by U-turning out of Comfey and into Magnezone to break the disguise. Then I obliterate her guts with a single Expert Bell boosted flash cannon. Look, on the bright side, we might have not been able to hit it from behind, but at least we came out of this experience with a totem badge and a crippling fear of girls. We can also catch another encounter here in Baynet to haunt the possibility of ever talking to a girl as we evolve our personal neck pillow into a life-size body pillow. Additionally, we can also buy some Thunderstones for a Alolan Raichu. With a huge jump in the level cap to 49, I boost up my Pokemon and power through the next few routes until I get to the area riddled with high school students wearing black puffer jackets, white Air Forces, and $90 mop haircuts. I battle a couple of grunts, picking up items along the way, until I eventually reach the boss, a 20-year-old high school student held back for skipping school to hit on a Walmart cashier. They led with Golisopod, which Magnezone can use to set up a charge beam and force away with emergency exit. I tank a critical Storm Throw from his Pinsir as Volt Switch does about a third and swaps to Drifblim. I thought a Gust could finish off the Pinsir, but not before it lands a powerful Throat Chop to force my hand into sending out Gyarados. Aqua Tail cuts off the Pinsir and Masquerain comes in, lowering my attack. I try for a bounce, miss the attack, and then flinch on the next turn, so I have to make a switch out to Raichu. I was fully confident that Raichu could outspeed, so I select Discharge to pick up the kill, but we get outsped and a Stab Bug Buzz instantly knocks out my Raichu. This was a complete misplay, and I didn't even get to use it in any battles. Volt Switch thankfully kills the Masquerain, and I can send out my Swampert one last time to finish off his Golisopod by landing an Aqua Tail. While not ideal, losing Raichu is acceptable. I still had a solid Electric type in Magnezone, and Jinx could still be on my back. Just beautiful. With back-to-back deaths chipping away at my roster, I decide that now would be a good time to get another encounter. By scanning some more QR codes, I can accumulate enough island scan points to scan for a Pokemon, this time on Route 8. By performing an island scan here specifically on a Tuesday, we can find ourselves a Combuskin in the wild. Again, I know that Torchic is the Pokemon that Nurse Joy had, but I'm allowing myself to use its evolutionary line. With the newly equipped Blaziken on the roster, it's about time we face this island's kahuna, Nanu. Specializing in dark types, I led Magnezone out against the Sableye to dish out some strong damage with Discharge as we easily tank a Shadow Ball. Seeing that I can get a free switch in with Volt Switch, I pick up the kill and send out Comfey at the same time. He swaps in Krokorok, which takes massive damage from Giga Drain, and hits an Earthquake on the next turn as we hit ourselves in confusion. I swap in Gyarados to relieve the Comfey, but instantly get hit with the Swagger. Thankfully, after tanking a Crunch, I can hit through the confusion to take out the Krokorok. Persian is his final Pokemon. I swap in Blaziken as he goes for his usual Fake Out, then land a massive Brick Break before suffering a powerful Power Gem. However, before the Persian can move, Blaziken hits a quick attack with +1 priority to knock out the Persian, winning us the battle. With the third Kahuna out of the way, this old man is befuddled and does his little dance before composing himself into his usual depressive manner and sulking off. Gladion on the side is watching the battle and congratulates our win by taking us to a one-way trip back to the Pokemon Slaughterhouse. Aether Paradise this late in the game is just a glorified battle factory sprinkled with some story on top. They threw everything at us. Double battles, single battles, boss battles, but all of them were handled pretty easily. When it comes down to the wire, only one battle really mattered, Lucami. She carries a team of 5 Pokemon, starting off with Clefable. I check her damage output with Charge Beam, boosting our offenses while doing so, then I knock it out with a Flash Cannon on the next turn. Seeing as how we can take a straight Fire Punch from Lopunny, I opt to a slow Volt Switch and a Blaziken to get a jump on Lopunny with a Brick Break. I counter her Milotic swap with a swap of our own, setting up Minimizes on Drifblim. I chain Shadow Ball Psychics into her Milotic and Beware until it was time to take on her Lilligant. With Blaziken sent in with a Lumberry to cure any confusion, Blaze Kick burns up the Lilligant in a single blow. If you can't already tell, we're pretty much steamrolling through this game. Turns out Nurse Joy's Pokemon really are cut out for a Nuzlocke, but we're still short for a bit of type coverage this late in the game. After I scan myself a couple more QR codes, I decide to do an island scan on Route 2 on a Friday so that we can find ourselves the adorable Gen 1 Grass Starter. I figured this would be the perfect encounter since both of its types are ones that we don't already have. But back to the Nuzlocke at hand. We have to power through Vast Pony Canyon, which is basically a pre-victory road blocking the 7th totem. Trainers are rocking powerful Pokemon of huge variety, and it takes several minutes of planning just to get through all of them. I sort of wasn't paying attention when I U-turned out of a Kangaskhan for Bayonet, just to lose it in a single crunch. I wasn't going to use Bayonet, right? That was the exact thought that came to my mind as I gaslit myself into thinking that it was okay to lose a Pokemon like this. Eventually though, we do make it to the end of the canyon, to the cave residing Totem Komo. Look, for this battle, I wanted to employ a clever strategy that had some clutch moments, but this was after a couple tough trainer battles with ace trainers and veteran trainers, and my mind was just tired, and it only came up with Toxic Stall as a viable solution, especially since Komo would be starting the battle with an Omni boost. So I start out with Venusaur, set up Toxic on the Komo and stall turns with Protect until I eventually passed out. I'll be honest, this won't be the last time I'll be using Toxic Stall. After Totem Komo, we're invited to the screening of the bootleg Pokemon version of Avengers Endgame. Necrozma fighting Lunala, then fusing with Lunala, then opening a portal to summon his Ultra Beast minions, and again, it's up to the child to defeat the alien. Luckily for this battle, I do have a plan. Leading with Zoroark disguised as Venusaur, we can safely hit a Night Slash into the quad-weak Ghost Psychic type for massive damage to take it out with ease. In fact, leading Zoroark disguised as a Venusaur is a foolproof plan even for an Ultra Necrozma. Despite having Omni Boost in all its stats, Zoroark baits the Psychic move Photon Geyser, which it's immune to. And we can use its Omni Boost against it by hitting it with a Punishment. With Punishment doing more damage the more boost the opponent has, 2 hits is all it takes to clean up Ultra Necrozma. After reuniting the Psycho family, we level up our team and head to Seafolk Village to engage in a series of boss rush battles for the 8th Totem Trial. Normally, a trial would involve fighting some weak fodder Pokemon before taking on the main course, but here we fight against all the trial captains again. First, I crush Mina's fairy Pokemon, then in the second battle, I use Blaziken's overwhelming strength and Brick Break to crush all of Ilima's normal Pokemon. In the third battle, I use Venusaur's grass coverage to take the life of Lana's water Pokemon. The fourth battle was cleaned up easily by having Gyarados' insane 125 attack set demolish Talonflame and Arcanine, just for me to miss Click Bounce and die to a Shadow Ball. Well, shit. We still have a trial to finish though. A couple captains give us their petals, no battle. Once we reach Nanu, Comfey cleans up his Sableye and Magnezone tanks a Z Black Hole Eclipse. We survive on 16 HP to get off a Volt Switch as disguised Zoroark and cheese his Absol. With all the petals now collected in hand, we return to Seafolk Village to take on the Totem Rabompi. Look, I admit, this was another Toxic Stall. Venusaur sets up the Toxic and protects its all turns. If I could have done a more noble strategy, I would have, but I didn't have anything else in mind. Plus, Totem Rabombi starts the battle with +2 Omni Boost, so there really wasn't anything I could do. With all the totems complete, it just means one last thing. Island Kahuna. Hapu's mastered the Great Ground type and leads the battle with a Golurk. Grass Knot from Venusaur gets rid of Hapu's 2 heavyweights, and I swap out a Flygon to dodge the Earth Power. Drifloon's bulky enough to tank a few hits, and retaliating with Shadow Balls is enough to take it out. Finally, Venusaur can come back in on a Muddy Water to crit the Gastrodon with a Grass Knot to win us the battle. With all the trainers, totems, and kahunas defeated, there is one last obstacle between us and the Elite Four. Gladion was no trouble when he challenged us, and he goes on a rant exclaiming about his character growth and empathy. We don't care. We, on the other hand, have Mount Lanakila to conquer. Mount Lanakila is a Victory Road type of location filled with trainers of all sorts. TMs and items are provided along the way, but none of the trainers are a threat. The real conquest of this challenge is seeing if a Nurse Joy type trainer can defeat the Alola Elite Four. In preparation for the finale, I bulked up my team with TMs and items, and all that was left of this holy grail was to defeat a couple more trainers, starting with Molayne. Being the rivaled master of steel types, Molayne's Pokemon can take some massive hits and deal some massive damage. His quirky little Klefki was the subject of a massive stab earthquake before going double or nothing with Metagross and losing both of them. Dugtrio was posed to crush an earthquake into Swampert that luckily we tanked and retaliated with an even bigger earthquake of our own. The last of his steel type arsenal consisted of Bisharp and Magnezone, both of which Blaziken took no pity on, and both of them knocked out in clean hits. The next of the four had no idea what was coming after them, as Olivia packed with rock Pokemon is on a course to suffer the same pain that Molayne went through. Armaldo moved first and hit a massive X-Scissor before Aquatail could do damage. Fearing the bulk that Cradily presents, I go into my massive special cannon and fire off flash cannons doing more damage than it can take. Volt switching out of the Probo breaks it sturdy and leaves it on just enough HP for Blaziken to take it out, boosting its speed in the meanwhile. Gigalith is a super heavyweight, requiring 2 high jump kicks, but Venusaur lives the Continental Crush and Magnezone finishes her off. The ghastly Acerola has some great ghost types on God. Night Days from Zora claps the Bayonet and Flash Cannon from Magnezone aces the Frostlass. From Palossand on is a Shadow Ball spam from Drifblim hitting over and over and over to finish off the little girl. And last comes Kahili. Despite Thunderbolt not one-shotting the Braviary, it gave us a Volt Switch to send out Drifblim. I went for the minimize strategy, but not before Mandibuzz could land a flatter, confusing us in the process. I tried to push through with minimize, but a punishment landed to take out my Drifblim. I swap in Blaziken to deal with Mandibuzz, then pivot into Magnezone to take the Z move. Charge Beam lands, giving us a +1, and Volt Switch kills, giving me the swap to Swampert. Ice Punch damages the Hawlucha, tanking a Flying Press in the meantime so that a second Ice Punch can kill. Finally, the Oricorio misses an Air Slash just for Swampert to land on Aquatail and win us against the final Elite Four member. With a single trainer left between us and the end of this Nurse Joy challenge, I knew what had to be done. Even with 2 deaths in front of us, I had this plan brewing from the start of this challenge, and nothing could stand between us. I placed Venusaur at the back of my party and entered the fight with Zoroark in my lead. Alolan Raichu knew not of what it had coming, as it was futile to fire off Psychics that did nothing to Venusaur. I nasty plodded away, sending out my special attack alongside Agilities, and then once I was ready, the assault began. Night Days phased both Raichu and Tauros out of existence, and just when they thought Incineroar was the one to turn the tides, even getting the critical, no, Focus Sash. That's all it takes. Even with Zoroark going down to Crabominable, the momentum was too great. All that was left was for Thunderbolt to clean up the rest of the battle and the challenge was over. I had beaten Pokémon Ultra Moon in a Nurse Joy challenge. In hindsight, this challenge wasn't actually too hard. I just chose a prominent Pokemon character who happened to have some good Pokemon, plus the encounter restrictions were pretty lenient. If I wanted to make a more strict Nurse Joy challenge, then I would have just grinded through with Chansey only. But if there's any other challenge in the future that you want me to try or other games that are interesting, put them in the comments. I'll be coming back alive on YouTube very shortly.